this is me talking to a parent, ask yourself, do I want them to play? If so, why? What will be a successful season for me as a parent? What are my goals for them? What do I hope they gain from this experience? What do I think their role will be on this team? So that's for me as a parent. Now, once I've answered these questions, then I will present the following to the youth athlete. Why are you playing? What is a successful season? What goals do you have? What do you think your role will be on the team? And I can listen, I can write down following or have them write it down, and then see if there's a gap and a disconnect between what the parent and feeling and thinking and want really out of this varsity or JV or freshman team experience and what my kiddo is trying to get out of this. Here's me as a fitness professional bias. I want a healthy relationship with movement, training, fitness, hard work, running, and then maintaining and bringing that into the college, whether they're playing a sport or not, and then life. I want a movement-based life for the rest of their life, a healthy relationship with hard work and fitness. Now, if I'm the reason by driving my kid into the ground and forcing this, that they quit a sport or refuse and stop working out, that's a problem.
Welcome to the Sold on Drip podcast, your ultimate destination for all things Dripping Springs. I am your host, Bill Caffaretta, and we are here to celebrate what makes this town the best place to live in the Texas Hill Country. It's amazing people. Join us as we sit down with local residents and business owners to hear their stories, learn why they love this community and are proud to call it home. We will be spotlighting their businesses, find out why they choose to serve the people of Dripping Springs, and dive into the local events that bring our community together. Our finger is always on the pulse, and we will be keeping you informed about how our rapid growth and development is impacting our schools, resources, and the local real estate market. Whether you're a lifelong resident or you have just discovered Dripping Springs, you will soon know why we are all sold on drip. Thanks for joining and enjoy this episode. Welcome to the Sold on Drip podcast. I'm really excited about my guest today. He's a fixture in the local athletic community here in Dripping Springs. I have Chris McQuilkin with Power Athlete, and a lot of you know him also as a assistant coach on the varsity lacrosse team here in Dripping Springs. So welcome, Chris. I'm happy to have you.
Thanks for having me and the opportunity, man, to talk about movement, training, and athletic development.
I think it's especially important today in this Dripping Springs that we now live in, because this has kind of become a little bit of an athletic powerhouse. We've had a lot of success athletically at the high school level. This year, we have moved up to 6A, which is the highest level for UIL athletics. Just recently, the girls volleyball team won the state championship. Football had an incredible run in the 6A playoffs, and right now, the soccer team is making a run through the playoffs, and we're hoping to see them get to the Final Four.
Yeah, there's nothing like high school athletics, especially now college enters into the UIL age, or UIL, my bad, the NIL age. Then NIL, high school is the last frontier of amateur athletics. That's all for the passion of the game.
It's true, but it doesn't start there. It starts younger, and we'll get into that because youth athletics pours into high school athletics. But we know why you're here, but let's learn who you are. So tell us a little bit about Chris, where Chris comes from, what makes Chris tick, and why he loves Dripping Springs.
A lot of love for Dripping Springs. Yes, I'm from Katy, Texas, west of Houston. And what drew me to Dripping Springs was it reminded me of my Katy growing up. Think late 90s, early 2000s, two high schools. You got rivalries, you got friends across the town. It was awesome. And what my business brought me to Austin, what allowed me to anchor and set up roots here was this community, and just so happened to have lacrosse. So my background, of course, grow up playing football, small town Texas. It was a way of life similar to our experience here. And I had an opportunity presented to me to join a lacrosse team. And simultaneously at the same time, we had some political challenges with our high school football program. And then my friends and I, we felt we were leaders, we were winners. and we banded together through the sport of lacrosse because we put our performance on our own backs and led the way. We had a fortunate gentleman that volunteered his time as a lacrosse coach, nothing like it is today with the formalities and the opportunities that our coaching staff gives to the kids. It was just a good time, and like we didn't want to go home after school. Lacrosse presented this opportunity for us that, you know, ran into some walls with the football team to continue to hold our performance in our own hands. And 5 of the 10 of us that started the team, we were able to go and play some college ball, which is awesome. And that led me to the East Coast, Marymount University. And that presented my first coaching opportunity as a graduate assistant for the team following my 4-year career. And then I found I was a better strength coach because I took the lessons I learned from lifting weights, sprinting, running as fast as I could from my collegiate career, and became just a strength coach over at Georgetown University over across the river from Marymount in DC. And that opened so many doors for me and really had the opportunity for me to answer questions that I could not unlock as an athlete. I was strong, I was fast, but there was this disconnect between my hard work and training in the weight room and then my performance onto the lacrosse field. And through Georgetown, I was working with crew, I was working with football, I was working with men's and women's lacrosse. It was making connections from the weight room to the field. It was making mistakes with athletes and realizing they were on scholarship. Everything that I gave them in respect to what weight training program, what running program, it had a direct effect on their performance, and their performance, that was why they were in school. So realizing and understanding this at the collegiate level, that what I gave to people as a coach had a direct impact on their livelihood, at this time, their school. And this door at Georgetown opened up so many more for me. I then went to St. Albans High School that was in DC, and working directly with, it was an all boys school. So all forms of programs, swimming, wrestling, lacrosse, of course, football and everything, and sending kids to Ivy League, Division I, all opportunities, and seeing this development from them from a 4-year period. So I had experience at the collegiate level, Division III, Division I, and then the private high school level. This also created an opportunity for me in my current position with Power Athlete to educate and teach coaches. So I've been fortunate to travel to 6 continents, 16 countries, lead over 100 seminars teaching coaches how to train kids to lift weights and run fast. So this sparked a lot of the discoveries that I had at Georgetown when I was working with different athletics, not lacrosse. There's no such thing as sports-specific training. The objective is going to be enhancing and increasing athleticism through the tools of weight room training and speed training. What I mean by that, if I can go to South Korea, I can go to Australia, I can go to anywhere in Europe, all of these regions have different sports. It's baseball for Korea, Australia is rugby. If you're working in Europe, it's going to be soccer. There is American football over there. In Ireland, it's called hurling. It's probably the most violent sport on the planet. All awesome. But then you have the weight room as this tool to expand and empower their performance as athletes. So now I come back to America and we set up roots here, Power Athlete in the hill country of Texas. And we continue this education and opportunity to empower coaches who then empower athletes. So I've taken this, and this is where we connected. I wanted to give back to the game that gave me so much and opened so many doors for me. I found this small town that was representative of the community and the culture that I want to live in. And now I have this game, this gift, the game of the gods, that I can now teach and educate and empower the kids and give them the gift that I wish I had when I was an athlete and had success in the sport in spite of not having any of this formal coaching and training that I've spent the last 10, 14 years really developing. And then now with Power Athlete, we get the opportunity to work with high-level operators in the Naval Special Warfare, Division I football, professional Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So all these different opportunities, but it's all in the scope and the filter of empowering and developing athleticism versus what's very common and a sales point for a lot of coaches out there, a sports specific training. There is no such thing as sports specific training. That's called practice. So now when it comes to developing strength, power, speed, coordination, these are all different tools. It doesn't matter what sport you're playing, whether you're a boy, a girl, it doesn't matter. It's all about movement. And that's what I aim to give to our lacrosse team every single day. And then it's my contention, our warm up. And I've got a free online course that I give away to people, powerathletehq.com, that teaches my anatomy of a warm up and the purpose and presentation. It's the one consistent opportunity that every athlete has, no matter what sport. So whether I'm going to work out, whether I'm going to practice, whether I'm going to compete in a game, whether I'm playing club ball or summer ball or formal UIL sport, I have a warm up. It's the one thing consistent across the board, whether I'm playing volleyball, basketball, lacrosse, football, doesn't matter, tennis. I have to warm up.
Well, the human body doesn't change what sport you're playing.
Exactly.
The human body is the human body.
And that's the opportunity, using the warm-up and my understanding of movement and how the body moves through space to enhance athleticism. So common practice is this warm-up is just, hey, coaches, cross their arms. They BS with each other. Maybe they go around with the athletes and give them a little talking to, hey, temperature check, how was school, what's going on? Or I can utilize it to unlock athletic potential. So go ahead.
You've been unlocking athletic potential at a really high level with high level athletes for a long time. And that is your profession. That is what you do. That is your passion. But what you've chosen to do is to bring this, because you're just pouring into local athletes. You've done this at the youth level with youth lacrosse with 7th and 8th grade for a handful of years. And now you're at the high school level. You've worked with JV, you've worked with varsity, and you're doing that at a much different level than you are with your D1 athletes, with the special forces, traveling to all these continents and working with these bigger programs. And when you look at that, what I'm the most curious to learn, and I think the listeners will be as well, is looking at that the way it pertains here in Dripping Springs, is the way that we can unlock that long-term athletic development in these youth athletes. We've seen you do it. You've been doing it. And what makes it interesting is you mentioned a lot about lifting weights, being in the weight room and transitioning the weight room to the field. But youth athletes, whether it's, middle school, DSYSA, even high school, don't always have weight room access. So how are we able to do that without actually being able to get a barbell?
Well, the first thing you need to identify is where an athlete is in their life cycle. So this is something to understand, where an athlete's life cycle in general. So essentially we have walking to 11 years old, and that scope, that breaks down to walking to 3. So then I can have specific fun games, tools. I'm just letting kids explore, and then maybe giving them small tasks and challenges of throwing, of climbing, but it's explore, and they can follow me around as a leader, and they can't take and receive much information. So it's aiming to gamify movement in that respect. Now, when we get into 4 and then we get up to 7, 8, we can get more specific with our tasks. We can introduce a teammate in high fives. So it's all working on practice there. And then the cool thing, when we get into 8 years old to that 11, think about preparation before, like formal sport is introduced. Then I can have leadership, I can have counting and have an individual lead a group and push-ups or jumping jacks and fun stuff like that. So the games get more complex because we integrate leadership into it versus just doing exactly what a coach models shows. From the 12 on, now we get into the middle school. It gets a lot more intense, and we can introduce the barbell in the middle school level. And this is no stranger to Texas. I started lifting weights when I was in 7th grade for football in middle school. I would not recommend anything that I did at that age. I do remember it all to anyone right now. But
yeah, we didn't start till 9th grade in the East Coast.
Yeah. And even at that, it's not that wrong that you were doing, it's what you were doing. So at
Yep.
the middle school level,
Yep.
it is purely instructional. The reason being, I'm not going to do 1RMs. The individuals now speaking to the male athletes, they don't have enough testosterone to create enough coordination and power to express a true 1 rep max. Their testosterone is up, down, and all over the place, especially at the middle school level. And what is required of a true 1 rep max is going to be testosterone and reps and opportunity. For these middle school kids and the beginning of high school, freshman, sophomore, they are not the same person week to week. They grew an inch, they grew 2, 3. They're all over the place in terms of hormones, mood, and coordination. So it is inappropriate to put that heavy load on them and then risk the injury when I could just work within 5s, 10s, and have this gift of coordination start to develop. So now I'm not mad at lifting weights at the middle school age, but no 1 rep maxes. It's just working heavy. And then this is where you need to check in and say, hey, how did that feel? Did it feel like work? Okay. And we can start to teach the lesson between, hard work and then pain. Because in middle school, they don't know the freaking difference.
Right.
So now strain versus pain. Okay. Did you work hard? Awesome. We're going to reward that. Are you sore? Excellent. That's and how we talk to athletes as well. Excellent. That was a great way. You worked hard. That's why you're so sore. That's a reward for you. You are not injured. That's going to be an introduction when they get into the delayed onset muscle soreness, also AKA DOMS. So I'm not mad at introducing the barbell to the middle schoolers. Just stay away from 1 rep maxes. Now we get into the high school age. This is for formal programs.
Well, let's pause a second on the youth aspect of this before we get to the high school, because there was a couple of things that you said of note that I found very interesting. When you look at the younger kids, 0 to 3, 4, right? They're following, they're learning, they're picking it up, but they're not necessarily processing everything you're telling them. They're kind of modeling your behaviors. And a lot of that came from gameplay, making it fun, interacting with them. You said high five. So encouragement is really important. And then from that, I think, and I'm going to defer this to you, but because you're an expert in this field, if gameplay, fun, and encouragement is coming from the leader, which is now the coach, what's the correlation there to then you flipped into leadership itself? So there's a modeling aspect there where these kids get to 9, 10, 11 years old when they start getting into middle school. Now we're seeing leaders. How is that being developed through athleticism?
It all depends on the coach at this stage.
Okay.
So the aim, and this is development, just essential cognitive development and movement development. It works in 4 stages, and this is how I operate as a coach. The first is going to be define. So I'm going to set, hey, this is going to be if it's working with the younger kids, it's going to be, this is our track that we're going to follow, or obstacle course. So I'll say exactly what we're going to do. And then I know they're not listening to me. So then I will show them the route and the path. I'll model. So we have define and model, and then shape. Say the kids are getting off track. I'm going to be there to help bring them back in and assist where needed, say on monkey bars or anything like that. And then reinforce. With the younger, I'm going to reinforce effort, attitude, teamwork, the good stuff, and not necessarily get into correcting of the movement, because I want it to be fun and exciting. So as they age up, I'm still in this
process based, not results based.
Oh, well, it's going to be process based throughout their career, and result is just the end game. So then that my filter of how I approach things, that continues: define, model, shape, reinforce, all the way up from walking effectively to operators. But then it just gets more focused and intent. Now I spend more time as I define and detail. If I'm getting into middle school football, this is me defining the plays. And then I have a model. Maybe if I'm middle school, I'm running the same offense as my high school. So then I'm modeling, I can show them high school film, or, hey, we're going to go all to the game on Friday and watch this team. And I could say, that's the play. This is it. So we have a model for them. And then when I shape, now I'm shaping and I'm coaching and I'm raising the expectation of execution that I have. So it increases as they get older. And I put more weight on execution and performance, but it's still effort, attitude, teamwork, and I'm reinforcing all the behaviors that go to being a good teammate. This is showing up on time. This is everybody's wearing the same uniform. Everybody's in line there. So I'm reinforcing behaviors that are going to lead to a successful high school athlete. So this is the beauty of middle school. You are allowed to make the mistakes before we add in what I like to call punishment, where you're paying for those mistakes. Now, this is remembering your cleats. It's all the little things, the mouthpieces, and some of the problems that, unfortunately, we still have to deal with at the high school level. But now, with high school, I get the tool of reinforcing with punishment, running, burpees, things they don't enjoy. So middle school is introducing this, establishing a high expectation of behavior, but then how I reward what they're doing correctly. And then the true punishment, it should be at a higher level when they already know by now. And
so is any of this, we're not talking sport specific, and as I gather, gender specific. I mean, these roles are the same across the board for anybody.
Well, for sure. I mean, if you don't have your shoes for any form of game, whether you're a boy or girl or whatever level, you can't execute. So we can't step onto the field without the cleats.
Right.
So now it's just how I respond to the individual is a little bit different than depending on their level.
So now we've given kids a basic understanding of movement, giving them a love for it, teaching them, through gameplay, through encouragement, through modeling, and getting them into the middle school level. Now they're at the high school level, and we're looking at, your 13, 14 coming in, 17, 18 coming out. What's their kind of role in that environment at the high school level through athletic development and just on-field play, and where does that mesh?
That's an excellent question, and how it should begin, in my opinion, for the freshmen and the sophomores in the weight room. This is boys or girls. I highly encourage female athletes to start weight training as soon as possible. The two differences: for boys, you focus on performance, and for girls, you focus on injury prevention. The byproduct of focusing on performance for boys will be injury prevention. The byproduct of focusing on injury prevention with the girls will be increased performance, and they're protecting themselves. Boys are going to put on a hell of a lot more armor, meat suit, muscle than females, just how we're wired and built through hormones. But then the females, they'll gain more coordination and use of the muscle that they do have. But the X factor of all of this, whether it's strength, power, or speed, is coordination. So the gift that a strength coach can give, especially if they're a freshman or a sophomore, when they're still figuring out their body every single day, is the gift of coordination. Now, how I accelerate the development of coordination is going to be through the weight room. We need to stress to progress. And in this phase of athletic development, there's two forms of coordination. The first is called intermuscular coordination. And maybe people have seen this in the wild when they try to lift weights themselves, or they've seen younger athletes lift weights. Intermuscular coordination is the first phase. This is when your biceps and your triceps, they learn about each other. That's the front of your arm and the back of your arm. And then your quads, that's the front of your legs, your hamstrings on the back side, and then your butt, this big ass muscle. They all learn that the other exists. And if we're squatting with weight, it looks like a baby deer, like Bambi legs. Or if we're bench pressing, it's very shaky. It's not a straight bar path like we've seen some of the older kids or professionals or us as grown men are executing on the bench press. It's not straight. It's not coordinated. And that's okay. This is problem solving with your body at the most simple level. It's a simple squat. It's a simple bench press, and it's going to take more reps and opportunity to do that. There's a tool called a Smith machine where the bar is locked in and your bar path is fixed. It's straight. You can't mess it up. That is one of the most detrimental tools for an athlete, because what is sport? It's using my body to solve a problem through space, whether it's basketball, soccer, doesn't matter.
We didn't have those growing
you.
up, but we had the like the Cybex machines, right? Where you just had on the bar and we put them up, and we had those and it was funny. The freshmen were allowed to use. I mean, I'm going back 20 something years in a weight room that was the size of my bedroom, in high school. But the freshmen were allowed to use those, and once you were a sophomore and above, you used the regular free weights. But I think part of that was also lack of space and equipment. But if you were a sophomore and above, you were not allowed to use those machines.
Yeah. So how that works, that is just locking in, focusing on one joint. And then no sport, especially at the high school level, exists like that. It's not played like that. We're just focusing on knee extension. No. It's knee extension while my hips are opening and my back's locked in and my arms are doing this. So it's everything. So the aim is to not take weighted baseball swings or weighted baseball throws or, weighted lacrosse pole or weighted anything. No, we don't want to replicate our sport. We want to do very general movements like a squat, a lunge, step ups into and adding resistance to accelerate coordination. So now the freshmen, there's something called a linear progression. This means we do more weight than we did yesterday. So I'm going to aim to add 5 pounds of the bar more on my squat than I did on Monday when I squat again on Thursday. And so it's gradually building up. Sets of 5 are perfect. And I need you to avoid, again, 1 RMs until you've exhausted this, what's called a linear progression, meaning you're just going to add as much bar weight to the bar as you can until we made it through that intermuscular coordination phase. And through our next phase, which is called intramuscular coordination, this is once our bar path is set, we're able to squat without looking like all shaky and wobbly like Bambi deer legs. Then our muscles coordinate, our motor units, that's the word I'm looking for, starts to coordinate. So our bar path is locked in and our quads can focus on power. So once our quads start to really focus on power and each muscle individually, now that they're learning to work together, this phase lasts about 6 weeks. Then I start to add more weight on, continue. And then once I'm through the first 3 months, 90 days, I've developed this coordination and I start to put on muscle mass. So if you've seen this, and this, I'm talking to adults now, P90X, or hey, if I'm running a gym, first 3 months, you get for 1 month. I'm doing that as a marketer because I know for the first 3 months, you're not going to see results. You're just going to get more coordination and you're going to feel better. And then you start to put on muscle. So it's everything works for 90 days. I just want it to be strong, heavy, barbell, because that is what builds muscle that protects you on the field. So it's amazing to see coordination in the wild. If you're seeing a kid lift weights for the first time, what I need to encourage you is stay away from that Smith machine. Stay away from the single joint exercises like Bill said, and just focus on complex movement, but not that complex, like a barbell back squat, lunging, stepping up, bench press, pull-ups, simple stuff that requires your whole body to execute. And the beauty is a lot of these kids, they can't generate enough force to get hurt if we're working towards sets of 5 to 10. It's those ones where they don't have enough testosterone to generate enough force to execute the 1 rep max. And then 2, if I, as a coach, take that 1 rep max and create a whole program based off of 1 rep max that I know isn't representative of their athletic ability, I'm taking away from their long-term athletic development. It should just be this gradual increase in weight until they can't do anymore. And at that phase, then maybe they're ready for 1RMs, but underneath spotters, supervision, and protection. I've seen enough injuries throughout 14 years of coaching that have taken away from kids' athletic careers just by unintelligent work in the weight room.
Well, you mentioned the fluctuation of testosterone and how that can be affected. We've talked about that in grown men as well, but it's even bigger fluctuations in high school students. So yeah, maybe your testosterone is flying high today. You got a lot of sleep last night. You've eaten well, you've been hydrated, and you put up a high max, but that's not indicative of your day to day, because this is not your typical level of testosterone in your body. I've seen, we talk about high school kids, but I'll never forget my first day of football camp in college. I watched our middle linebacker throw a ton of weight on the bar and get all jacked up and try to throw it up. And I saw that pec explode under his shirt, and he was out for his entire senior year.
Yeah. Yeah. In my high school, we kid blew out his back deadlifting. And so the coach just said, no more deadlifting. Was it the
for anybody?
For anybody.
Yeah.
So then I didn't deadlift until well past college, but then because I associated with injury, it wasn't the movement that got hurt. Right. It was the poor instruction. The kid went too heavy. So I essentially, there's no bad movements, exercises. There's bad movement.
Right.
And when you get under heavy enough load, that's when the injuries occur.
Well, that's a term we've heard quite a bit from young guys. I mean, going back years, like here and elsewhere, is I got under too much weight, and now guys are trying to figure out that line of sore versus injured, and what that feels like, and that's a hard thing to put on a young athlete who might not know the difference.
Yeah, they don't know their body well enough, and this is where the weight, pun intended, of a coach comes in that can guide them and actually listens and can help direct their understanding of what they're feeling in their body when it comes to hard work, strain versus pain, and not just you're being soft, keep going. And then they learn not to listen to their bodies, and that's when injuries occur. Overuse, overload. There's a lot that can go wrong and will go wrong. And what I hate to see is when coaches blame athletes for that. Yeah. Versus looking, okay, what could I have done to then potentially prevent this injury? And here's another thing for quickly, I know we got a lot to cover, but if a coach sees the same injury by 2, 3, 4, more than 2 people, you got to look at the program and what you're doing. So there are one-offs where something happens because, we're all the same, but we're all different. But then if it's the same injury to multiple individuals, I need to take a hard look at my program and try to find where that led to it. So that could be in season. Then I need to look at my off-season training. What did I miss that then led to this injury occurring in 2, 3, 4, 5 people? Or if my training caused it, if it's a training injury that's on me as a coach.
As a New York Giants fan, being the most injured team over the last 5 years, they need to be looking at their off-season program and their teams. But that's interesting too, because you see patterns, whether professional, high school, college. You'll have multiple guys on the same team tearing their ACL or shoulder, whatever it might be. There's your freak injuries. You get rolled up on your knee, nothing you can do about it. But there's patterns for sure. Definitely patterns.
Contact is different.
What I really want to dive into is you are talking about the luxury of being a district or a program that has a weight training program, that has a weight room, that has 20, 30 squat racks, bench presses, has all that. What can we do with athletes who don't have that, who may not have that over the summer, may not have that in season? How can we create athletes, whether they're, and I don't want to, go into the super young, but let's say, 7th and 8th grade, high school, work on movement, work on strength training, work on athletic development and injury prevention without a weight room, and being able to do that, on your own with a coach in a team setting? How can we do that without actually having barbells and squat racks?
Yes, this is something I take pride in, and we have been able to accomplish well with our team on the field and no access to the weight room. So again, going back to the warm up. So it's not just getting your chili hot and, breaking a sweat within there. We set up and then we focus on our lower body. There's 3 movements that we aim to cover. My dog's walking in. The squat, the lunge, and then a high knee step up, like a march or a sprint. And so those are the 3 actions within a hip that we aim to target in our warm up. The next is called a plane of motion. This is the plane, the path the body moves along. So there are 3. The first is called the sagittal plane. This is me going forwards. This is me running 100 meters on a track through a straight line. This is me squatting in a squat rack. This is anything I can do in a door frame. That represents the sagittal plane. The next is called the frontal plane. This is jumping jacks, where my arms are moving to the side, or I'm facing forward and I'm moving my body to the left or to the right. So the frontal plane, this is where most injuries occur.
Like a side shuffle in basketball?
Side shuffle in basketball, that'd be an example of a movement. And then contact in the frontal plane. So if I'm running forwards and my eyes are upfield and I take a hit from the side, this is where back injuries occur.
Mm.
Or if I'm running forward and my knee, I take contact to my knee from the side, that's when we start to see the MCL go down. So that movement there. So the frontal plane is where most injuries occur, right? Think about rolling of the ankle. That's through the frontal plane. Mm-hmm. Now, the last but not least is the most athletic and dynamic. It's called the transverse plane. This is rotation. It's twisting. It's opening up. And more importantly in sport, especially like football or baseball and lacrosse, my ability to separate my shoulders, my upper body from my lower body. So if my hips are facing forwards, I need to twist and separate my shoulders from my hips. So those are 3 planes of motion. So I'm gonna
do a little lighthearted comment in here to break up the science. It's funny because my undergrad degree is in health and exercise science. And you just gave me nightmares to a paper I had to write senior year. It was a project, big thing, where we had to take an athletic movement and break it down of every muscle, every bone, everything that happened during the movement. And because I was just a big lacrosse guy, I decided I was going to do the lacrosse shot. And this thing took me.
Bold move.
Oh my God. I went transverse plane. I should have just done the bench press. There was guys that did the exact same project and their thing was a page and a half long because they were just doing one joints movement. And I had to break down ankles, knees, hips, elbows, shoulders. It was a dumb move on my part, but it was like going back to a lecture in 2005. But
yes, and
sorry,
so
just
that goes to the complexity, and how we can simplify it is just the hips, the action of our hips, squat, step, and lunge, and then the 3 planes of motion. So now again, I only got 10 minutes. So if I normally, and I've seen a lot of dynamic warm-ups in my career, it's just sagittal plane and just do, hey, whatever exercises you're feeling today, and then the team lollygags through it.
Mm-hmm.
When in fact,
because it becomes autopilot. You do the
exactly.
same. You do the same warm-up every day. It's autopilot. High knees. You just go through the motion.
Yeah, and we need to start to elevate performance and start to switch our mind on. So how we're able to accomplish that, I hand off the counting to different players. So the reason being is they practice leading. So whether they're a freshman or a senior, whoever, they stand up and they have to lead the count. And it's always random. It's not just leaders. It's everybody on the team. So call out random folks there to lead and get comfortable being there. I also introduce one new exercise, one new movement a day. So this sets the tone of the practice, because what are we doing in practice? We're teaching and then providing them the opportunity to execute. Guess what I'm doing in the warm-up? I teach them one new movement and then add to a catalog of skills, squat, step, lunge, and different exercises, just like I'm going to do within lacrosse. But however, it's less complex. So this is one thing I love to bring to sport coaches when I talk to them. Right, the fundamentals of sport. think about stick work, think about passing. You think of a sport, flashbacks to fundamentals, the first 2 weeks of preseason. Well, I want to think of my warm-up every single day as fundamentals to the fundamentals. Squat, step, and lunge through 3 planes of motion. That is sport. That is baseball. That is lacrosse. That is football. We just simplify it and then help prepare and elevate performance. The beauty of a lot of the tools that I utilize, it's the assessment tool, but it's also the corrective exercise. So if both of us are down in one of my favorites, it's called a dead bug. And then anybody that wants to see the exercises and the things we do, just check out my Instagram. It's just at my last name, McQuilkin. But if you're doing the dead bug and I'm doing the dead bug and 40 other dudes are doing the dead bug, some of them are working on weak hips. Some of them are working on tight calves. Some of them are working on tight hamstrings. Some of them are working on weak trunks. And so on and so forth. So every single person on the team is doing the same exercise. However, they're using it to correct their own personal limitations. So now we have only 10 minutes. I got 10 exercises. Each one is targeting each individual's limitations. However, it's also representative of movement in sport, period. Not specific to lacrosse. It's just movement. So that 10 minutes is extremely valuable, and it must progress. So there's a biological law called accommodation. So if we do the same exercise, the same warm-up, we run the same mile, we do the same weight on the bench press, we do the same thing, our bodies will adapt. And then it starts to have a detraining effect. It may appear the first 1, 2, 3 weeks to be prepping us and getting our chili hot and ready for game day. But after 3 weeks, we stop having a positive response to it. We adapt to it. And now we're in a negative, a detrained effect, even though we went through our full warm-up routine before a game.
Yeah.
So this is what we've done essentially, is throughout the season, progressively make this more challenging, and the dudes have become more athletic and they're not even aware of it.
Well, and it indirectly affects their confidence. And, I know in the beginning of this, before you came on board with the program, we had the same warm up for 4 or 5 years because that's just what we did. And it was easy. And the guys remembered it from year to year. And there was some resistance here because it was unknown, but also because it was difficult, and it got progressively more difficult. But what I've seen from the outside looking in, because I'm not the one implementing this, is I've seen confidence. I've seen, frankly, guys paying more attention to what's happening because they don't know who's going to be called on to count or to lead the exercise, and they have to know what it is, how to do it, and how to lead the other guys. And it has absolutely progressed them as athletes through movement, and is working on so many different things. I mean, we're more athletic, injury prevention, and you've tied it all in too. I know you coach on the defensive side, and defense in any sport is nothing but footwork and reaction. And you find ways to tie that in directly every day to what we're trying to do and the steps we're trying to take on the field.
Yeah. And that's the goal. That's the goal of the weight room and the goal of the warm up. So if I'm a strength coach or performance coach and I can't take the tools, the strength, the power, and the speed that they've developed and make the connection to the sport, then I've wasted time and effort and energy. So it's about taking the positions, the posture, the execution, the skills, and bringing it to the more general movements in the weight room and the warm-up that we're doing, and helping them make that connection to give that gift of confidence, give that gift of coordination. Because the one thing I don't want them to take away and be, and this was me in football anyway, the strongest kid in the weight room being the strongest kid on the bench.
Yeah.
If I line up, no one's going to ask what I bench press, what I squat. It doesn't matter. No. It matters how you move and execute your skill.
We had a kid like that when I was in high school and crushed the weight room all summer, just crushed the weight room. And every year I'm like, he's going to be playing safety, linebacker. Like, he's going to be the dude. We get on the field and just couldn't do it. Like, never could play the game.
Yeah, and those were mistakes that I made early in my career, like having the same warm-up for our lacrosse team, and having these kids that would just smash and crush the weight room, and I'm hyping them up to coach, and then they get blown off the ball, they get beat, and they're just staring at you on the sideline like, you lied to me. Like, what is this? I can squat 600 pounds and I am getting torn apart on the field. So that look, it is powerful, it is painful to watch as a coach, and you have to look inward, and there's no way to point your finger at them. One final point on this is essentially coordination. This is another form of developing what a very popular term called coachability, right? The time invested, and sport coaches are very selfish. I say that as a sport coach that understands strength. Very selfish. I want more skill work. I want more shooting. I want more batting practice. I want more passing. You want more, but then is it worth the time invested that you're getting? So the time that we're investing in our 10-minute targeted warm-ups is targeting and developing coordination, which then a more coordinated athlete is a more coachable athlete. So when I communicate to them in how I want their foot position or how I want their hands or arms in shooting, they've done plenty of reps in the warm-up to make that adjustment after 1-2 coaching cues and direction versus 15 coaching cues.
Right.
And then I'm scratching my head like, this kid, he doesn't have it. And I write that person off.
The key word is ability. Without coordination and athleticism, you don't have the ability to implement the sport. And the more complex the sport and more complex the movements are, I mean, you talked about the transverse plane, just simply shooting in lacrosse is feet, ankles, knees, hips, all of it. It is difficult, and to create that athleticism, to create that coordination. And then once you have that and you have that baseline, is kind of the next thing you have been leaning on is strength training and making them stronger athletes, which is pretty amazing to do without a weight room.
Yeah. I don't want to bore people with science. So we do what's called manual resistance, where instead of weights being the resistance that the athlete is pushing against, we just use teammates. Why I like that? It's safe. It's near impossible to get hurt. And the dudes are getting more and more comfortable with pushing and challenging each other. So pairing offense and defenders up, they have a healthy sense of challenge when they're pushing, and then they know they got to push against their teammate the next time around. So that's how we work around. There's a lot of science going on there I'm not going to touch, but the best thing that I like about doing that is the team is forced literally to get closer to one another.
Well, there's a study I've been leaning on for years and years and years, and it's the reason why we do a lot of the things we do. It's why when we circle the field before a game, everybody gets a high five. The NBA was proven that the most successful NBA teams across the last couple of decades are the ones that touch the most, whether that's high fives, shoulder bumps, butt slaps, whatever it is. The teams that touch the most and are in most close proximity to each other, which increases your excitement, increases your encouragement, are the most successful teams year over year. And getting these guys close, getting them working together, having a sophomore paired to the senior, a junior paired to the freshman, mixing up those things day to day, so it's not the same guys every day working together, brings them closer together as well. And there's a lot to be said about that outside of just athletic ability and sport specific training.
Yes. I know we got some things to get to. One thing I do want to cover is sports specialization, which is all the rage in the US of A.
Yes.
And it was awesome growing up because we had the seasonality of sports, and our parents literally, they didn't give a damn, just get the hell out of the house. And that's what really sparked me even playing lacrosse is I don't go home. So now introduction of club ball, and we saw this in the late 90s with basketball. And one of the most amazing books that I ever read is called Boys Amongst Men. It's about the 10-year gap, including LeBron James, Kevin Garnett, Kobe, that the dudes skipped college and went directly to the NBA, and how that set the league back. It's an amazing book, but then it spoke a lot about the specialization in the AAU and the club ball, essentially for basketball, and how it took away from the development as those young men, even though it was so much skill work, it took away from their character development, their physical development, because they no longer went into the weight room. And then the whole league got sent back 10 years because of leadership. So you had these teams that were willing to risk their 12th man roster spot on a high schooler rather than keep the savvy vet around who's not going to get any playing time, but he's going to teach the young guys how to be professionals. That set the league back 10 years. But then the basketball, that method, that mode, it went into baseball. And then eventually we're seeing it take over lacrosse as these travel teams. Sports specialization, it also takes away from the opportunity of an off season to develop. Football is the only sport that has an off season connection to weight training built into it. Otherwise, it's just more sport, more skill. So now, if there's a way that we can bring back in off-season training to these other sports, then we're in a good position. So now basketball as an off-season program for football is awesome because it works on being evasive and breaking down and expression of dynamic display of athleticism. Now, I would argue lacrosse is even more practice being evasive. So instead of smash mouth me running into another person, football, I have the opportunity to go around them and be more athletic. And then I have feet connected to the ground. I won't be jumping as much as in basketball in football. So if I'm a football athlete looking to get better at football, I want to find something, another sport that puts me in a position to enhance my limitations. And then in my humble and biased opinion, it is lacrosse.
Right.
So that is direct connection to making me a better football player as the benefits that make me an excellent lacrosse player and beyond. So it's,
and we've seen, I mean, our best players have been the crossover athletes. Athletically, you have your football players, but then the combination of scheme and athletics, basketball, our best players have been basketball players. Kids that grew up as point guards, didn't make the team as a sophomore maybe, and they come out and play lacrosse. They have the physical ability to play and the mental ability to play, and they can pick it right up because it's essentially the same sport concepts, and they're just practicing it in a different way.
And that's the key thing. It's principles within competition and movement and getting in the way that are connected. And we see it between lacrosse and basketball. We see it between football and basketball, football and lacrosse. And it's there, but they're not getting it without picking up another sport. I'm not saying you have to be an all-star and starter, but the quality reps that you get at practice will start to translate into your love, your passion as a sport.
Well,
But
we see the basketball player crossover, our wrestlers make great face-off guys, make great defenders. I coached the kid years ago who plays in the NFL right now, who was an unbelievable defenseman, and you couldn't beat him in a one-on-one. He was an offensive tackle.
So, yeah, and defense is offensive lineman in football. So, like, it's there. If you want to get better of an offensive line, come play long stick, close defenseman in lacrosse. So the encouragement for parents is don't fall for what the club coach is selling. Here's a term. This is Latin. It's called cui bono. Who benefits? So if they're telling you, hey, oh, your kid, your son, your daughter, they're going to make it to the next level if you play on my team. Right. And then they speak negatively about the other things, that's going to be a big red flag. How about we speak to the benefits and the opportunities of what this can lead to, and then present other opportunities that would be beneficial. This is where the weight room comes in. Like, you need to get bigger, you need to get stronger, or your coordination, your footwork is off. Okay, so it's finding other opportunities versus a coach that's going to say, hey, if you pay me this, I'm going to guarantee you this.
Right.
Any guarantees in athletics, it's a wash. There's
You
plenty
see
of
that,
walk-ons.
yeah. We have I mean, man, I go back 7-8 years, football player here, Ethan Fernia, football. I mean, he was good in high school, but wasn't recruited, wasn't a big 4-star recruit. Walked on at UCLA, captain at UCLA. Now he's on the Indianapolis Colts. And I always point back to Ethan, didn't know him well, kind of saw him around, but was just an unbelievable kid who worked hard, put in the work, and made the most for himself, didn't rely on somebody doing it for him.
Mm-hmm. And there's so many success stories. And this is something my high school coach told me that I held on to. I absorb quotes. I love quotes. I love coaches. And this is one my high school coach dropped. He said, you're going to be remembered for what you're not supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And there are two sides to this coin, meaning me as playing lacrosse for 2 years, going to play on the East Coast. I wasn't supposed to do any of that. I wasn't supposed to start, captain, anything. Any of my success as a lacrosse player, I wasn't supposed to do any of it. But now I'm memorable in that respect in my circles there. So now if I'm some stud who the club coaches have built me up, I'm supposed to go Division I. I'm supposed to do XYZ, whatever. And then I don't. I'm going to be remembered as a never was and a has been. So it works on both sides. So the aim is
it adds a lot of pressure too, because you see kids that'll commit and they're Division I players. So now they're supposed to be the best player on the team. They're supposed to be the best player in the conference.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go out and have a good game, but not a great game. And they're disappointed because they didn't live up to a measurement of external success that hasn't been defined, because they're now supposed to do that. When in reality, everyone's allowed to have a bad game, a bad season. It's okay. That doesn't define you.
Yes, and that's the challenging thing. And we're talking athletics and your identity. If you identify as an athlete and you don't have friends, hobbies, anything outside of that, it's going to end. All athletic careers are going to end. Whether it's a junior in high school, a senior, some point in college, post-grad, or even in the pros, and you get your shot, it's going to end. So if you're wrapping your whole identity around being a baseball player, about being a football player, and then doing the club ball thing for no matter what sport, and that is your life, that is it, you are setting yourself up for failure.
Yeah. And what makes it difficult to see sometimes is that this doesn't just happen at the varsity level. We're seeing this leak down into middle school, elementary school age kids, where there's a pressure and you have to play in this year-round travel club. And let's put the cost of it aside. Just the pressure on a kid who's in 4th or 5th grade that has to maintain that social commitment to this team, or they might be looked at as an outcast, even in elementary school grade.
Which is a shame. And that's unfortunate. And that's what a part of me is really mad at a lot of the club situations. Money aside, as you said, like the pressures at that age when summer should be going out and doing summer things and getting away. Your natural off season until it's time for, the August heat. And I don't think they do 2-a-days anymore, but the time for me to suffer again with my friends and teammates after we just had a great time.
Well, seeing this, when this drops down to that level, that's not the kid pushing it. I mean, a lot of that's the parent pushing it. And that's the parent who may not know any better because they're being socially pressured. So kind of brings me to the last big question I had for you was, what is the role of a parent in athletics, in youth athletics? I guess we could say the amateur, right? But like youth, like through that middle school, through high school, like what is that role, and where is the parent able to help the kid, and where are they unknowingly failing their kids right now?
So I'm gonna go back to the age groups that I introduced, right? Walking to 11. I did that on purpose because at that point, athletics and sport, that is a joint venture. You and your kid, you're in it together. You're taking them to games, you're cheering them on. And it's a lot of the social, especially the younger parents, right? That becomes your social circle, is your kiddos' soccer teammates.
Oh yeah.
So that is, it's a joint venture. It's part of the family and Sundays and tradition. And then it gets to the point where you hand off, and a lot of the parents are coaches too. I got to add that in. And then you hand off, once you get into the middle schools, them to a professional coach, a professional teacher. And it is no longer a joint venture. It is the athletes. It is theirs to own and make mistakes and take risks and put themselves out into vulnerable positions. Like in baseball, batter's box, there's nowhere to hide. You either hit it, you get an out, you strike out, and you got to walk your ass back to the dugout. Like there's nowhere to hide in baseball. So now it is.
As somebody who was terrible at Little League, I know what that walk back feels like, and it's humbling.
Yeah, I know I mentioned some benefits of all other sports except baseball. I'm not biased against baseball. Big baseball guy, especially
love
the
baseball.
fact that
Big Astros guy.
The big Astros guy. So now it's on them. There's nowhere to hide in baseball. So that's why I like baseball. It's me versus you. It's the pitcher versus the batter, and it's similar to wrestling. There's nowhere to hide. Wrestling is probably the most difficult of it all, essentially. So now, again, parents, you hand it off to the kid to go make the mistakes, and it's an opportunity for them to fail and then learn from failure. We want them to fail in sport and then, make their own friends or be on a team and operate with somebody that they don't get along with.
Yep.
And that's going to be sport. Maybe they learn to become friends with this individual that may rub them wrong the first time they connect or the first few weeks, but then they're forced to work together on a team. And that's going to be, that's going to be life. You're going to be working in offices and jobs with people you don't get along with, but you still got a job to do. Otherwise, they'll find somebody else to do it with sport as well. So this joint venture that ends, and that middle school time, this is why I did appreciate working with the middle school lacrosse teams a few years ago. And it's cool to now, 4 years later, see the dudes progressing through their high school career. But that seeing for the first time the kid on their own and making mistakes and creating a relationship with the parents to help them navigate that, because the parents are they're taken aback as well. So it's this handoff. And then, as you get into the middle school and then especially the high school, it's important that we highlight this relationship with parent and athlete. And then I like to break it into 3 phases. This is before the first game, phase 1, 2 during the game, this is a big one, and then post game. And before the first game, I encourage parents to talk to the kids. And whether they're playing one sport or multiple sports, try to find a time before the season starts. And hopefully you're not going year round with a single sport. But ask them straight up the following. And I can send these to you, Bill, so you have them for show notes. But first and foremost, so ask yourself, this is me talking to a parent, ask yourself, do I want them to play? If so, why? What will be a successful season for me as a parent? What are my goals for them? What do I hope they gain from this experience? What do I think their role will be on this team? So that's for me as a parent. Now, once I've answered these questions and I have them typed up and in hard copy, so I can't be forced to change my opinion, then I will present the following to the youth athlete. So numero uno, why are you playing? What is a successful season? What goals do you have? What do you think your role will be on the team? And I can listen, I can write down following or have them write it down. I prefer encouraging parents to have this conversation in person, and then see if there's a gap and a disconnect between what the I, the parent, am feeling and thinking and want really out of this, varsity or JV or freshman team experience, and what my kiddo is trying to get out of this. If there is a disconnect, I'm not going to force my answers to my questions on them. That's setting them up for burnout, hating. Yep. Here's me as a fitness professional bias. I want a healthy relationship with movement, training, fitness, hard work, running, and then maintaining and bringing that into the college where they're playing a sport or not, and then life. I want a movement-based life for the rest of their life, a healthy relationship with hard work and fitness. Now, if I'm the reason by driving my kid into the ground and forcing this, that they quit a sport or refuse and stop working out, that's a problem. So these are before the first game questions that I want parents to ask, and then they got to look in the mirror and see if there's a disconnect between these two. So now this is now parent to discuss with the coach. This is very important, I feel, as well. Coaching is pretty low.
We're still before the first game.
Yeah.
Okay.
So coaching is a very low barrier of entry to get into, is in terms of a profession. More often than not, the first question is, hey, did you play this sport? Okay, you're hired. Yeah. Not at Drip lacrosse, I'll tell you that much. But for the majority of this, it's a low barrier of entry. And so now as a coach, as a parent screening coaches, then I want to look for and discuss, like, I won't give you set questions to ask for this, but discuss the mental and the physical treatment. So ask them how they're going to challenge your kid mentally and physically. So how are you going to challenge them? What's the conditioning? Or what if they are late to practice? What's your punishment style? So try to find a way how they will present mental and physical challenges for your kids. What are some ways that, Sally can help improve her throwing, her batting, whatever? So ways, and how will a coach recommend they improve their athlete's ability? And if the coach says, oh, extra lessons, I'll charge you X, or hey, just go throw the ball against the wall, or find a friend on the team to stay after late with school. It shouldn't cost you anything as a parent for getting better at their sport. I'll tell you that much. So, and then in line with behavior, how are we going to communicate if there's concerns, if you have concerns about my kid's behavior? So this is, okay, now we establish what communication between parent and coach will be. And it mainly, in my opinion, should be behavior-based versus anything that has to do with skill and effort, playing time, none of that stuff. And Bill, you have an excellent line drawn in the sand of who communicates, and then when a coach crosses that barrier for reaching out and communicating to a parent. So in my opinion, it should just be about behavior versus anything else to do with the sport. And yeah, so again, playing time, team strategy, play calling, or other team members, all off the table. But so it just comes down to treatment, mental and physical for your child, ways to improve, recommendations that the coach and the parent can both get on the same page with outside of practice. Don't fall for any paid practices, and then concerns of behavior. Yes. So that's between parent communication and coach. Yeah. Any thoughts there? Like this is your wheelhouse, dude. And
I agree with you wholeheartedly here. And what really stood out to me is the actually answering those questions, putting them on paper, and knowing what they are and kind of sticking to them. And it doesn't mean your opinion can't change on them as time goes on throughout the season, because we always look at ourselves as coaches and with players and we reassess our goals. There's points in the season where we reassess. But I have found over the course of a long time that the goals for the parents and the goals for the kids are not aligned. And if you're not aligned there and the parent expects X and the player expects Y, there's conflict between parent and player, and then the player may not be living up to that, but then they're expected to, and then it makes it tough on the coaches to figure out where that disconnect might be coming from. And we see it, and it creates burnout, it creates resentment. And it might just push a kid just right. It might push a kid too far. And it's a communication piece that's important to be done in sports and academics and what your plans are after high school. I think that's important. And having a healthy relationship and a healthy communication between parent and coach, and knowing where those boundaries are, and knowing you can ask questions, but what questions to ask is also really important as well. And it's better to find that limit and to find where you can go than to not do it at all.
Yeah. And some of the points that you were making there, I was going to hit in the after the game, but it's in line there. And I gotta tell the parents, like, you're handing off your athlete to this new authority figure for them to grow and make mistakes on their own. Stop interfering. And then especially if your wants for success for your kid are not equal to theirs, okay, well then don't force feed them. If it's anything, you can help raise their aim and their self-esteem and how they view themselves. And maybe, I think you only want one goal this year. No. Hey, let's go for 3. Last year you did this. I think you're primed to take a step up.
I think
so. If anything, it's raising the self-confidence.
The most important on that athlete's responses needs to be that they're there to have fun.
Yeah.
If they're not there to have fun, and if the parents also that's the number one that they need to come to an agreement on, that sports are fun. That's what they're for. That's why we do this as coaches, players. That's why it's important. But we are running out of time, and I do want to kind of get through this. We could talk on this forever, and we probably will after we stop recording as well. But during the game, what is the role of the parent during the game?
Sit back, encourage. At no point should you be having or asking or gaining your attention from your kid away from the responsibility of the coaches. Again, you hand it off, their performance, their play, to the coaches. Keep it that way. Draw no attention to yourself other than, motivational, and at no point talking to the officials. This is, I think, a big problem across the country. Not saying anything in particular about our town, but it's real out there. And unfortunately, just keep your mouth shut and understand
it's detrimental to the officials too, in that sense. I mean, these
bias.
are
Officials are biased.
Well, it's human beings doing a job, and they don't want to do it if they're getting badgered.
And then we lose good officials because they don't want that.
We do.
So how I want to paint that picture is you're allowed to be emotionally invested in your kids' playing time and having fun and executing out there. And I encourage coaches to go to 10-year-old soccer games. So the ones that they hit at those massive fields behind HEB, and just watch, not your kid. So you're unemotionally invested. You're just there to watch other parents and how they react, and then see if, I sometimes react that way, or I can see. So it's at a kid's soccer game. It's not the varsity level sports where even I, as a non-parent, can get pretty enthralled in the enthusiasm in the events. But now it's just seeing how emotions connected to this kiddo's performance can negatively bring some competitiveness out of me as a parent. So and now
that's sport in its rawest form. I mean, 5-6-year-old soccer, it's not the most competitive thing to watch, but it's just kids having fun, and they're doing it because they're with their friends. Yeah,
and some parents really get into it.
They get into it. What about after the game? What about the post game?
Post game, this is the most important, because these are the kids they're in a moldable position, and your intent with certain words may not match the impact that your kid hears. So if you're saying, hey, old Sally, she's her ball hog, your intent may be, hey, you should take more opportunities or hold on to the ball or take more shots yourself. That's what you may intent, but how is it impacted? Then now they can take a negative connotation towards their teammate, or saying like, or questioning the coaches, why are they running so much of this play, or why are they running so much zone? So now the parent may be thinking, oh, you are really good at on-ball defense. They should give you more opportunities to shine there. What's it interpreted as? Oh, the coach they don't know. They don't know what they're talking about. So understand what you say may have a different than the impact than you intended it to. Now, it should
goes for win or lose.
Yeah. So now, and think about how you can phrase certain things when your child played well, but the team lost. Be prepared to have that conversation. Now, when your child played poorly, no matter the results of the team, what are you going to do to help build them up and communicate? And then when your child played very little or not at all, what's your words and focus? Is it on the coaching staff? Is it on them? Is it on the teammates and things like that? So now, 3 different scenarios for you to think about. And I think it should be as simple as, I loved watching you play. And no matter the result, man, ice cream better be in the car ride on the way home. Like
that. That quote actually comes from the Changing the Game project by John O'Sullivan. It's another fantastic book. I would love for every parent of a youth athlete, whether you're in 3rd grade or a varsity athlete, to read that book. And that's the key to it, man. I loved watching you play today. And you got to give the kid time. And it doesn't mean you can't have the conversation. It doesn't mean you can't talk about the good and the bad. But win or lose, it should be, I loved watching you play your sport today. Go home, get the ice cream, take a shower, have dinner. And then when both of you were calmed down, it's, hey, what'd you think of the game today? Have the conversation. Don't critique, don't push. But it's got to be that, I enjoyed watching you play today.
Yeah. And
give them a moment. And then,
sorry. Yeah. John Wooden quote, young people need models, not critics. So effectively, you're preparing them as a parent of how to respond to adversity, how to respond to failure, how to respond to where my team is successful, but then I in particular was not. I went 0 for 4 in the batter's box today.
Right.
Which then will translate to how they respond to adversity and such in college and in life, and eventually their own kids.
Well, my overall coaching philosophy, and I know we're very aligned on this, is we want kids that are going to be better at the next facet of their life, whether they're coming from middle school to high school to JV, or JV to varsity, or varsity to college, or they're leaving to go to the workforce, or they're leaving. We just want them to leave it better than they found it, be better humans as they move forward, be better men, and be prepared for the next phase of life, whatever that might be. Playing Division I sports, great. Going to community college, great. Getting out of school, not going to college, and getting into the workforce, fantastic. But be the best version of you when you do that.
And yeah, and then in line with that, the best version of you. So sometimes they need spaced following a game, but sometimes, say if there's a behavior connected to it, they did something, said something, reacted one way that they shouldn't, don't give them space, because then you can now step in, not as a critic, not as a second coach, but as a parent, and help them realize that mistake, so then it doesn't cost the team or anyone next go around. So I'm not saying, and we're both not saying, don't say anything after the game, except I love watching you play. Step in and either be a parent. I mean, just be a parent. Don't be a critic or a coach.
Yeah. Give them space, let them decompress, because again, we talked about in athletes, they're not the same person every day, every week, and the reactions may change as well. So we want to respect that from them. But Chris, I really appreciate you coming on today, dropping some real knowledge. We got deep today, man. That's something we're both really, really passionate about. And like we said, this Dripping Springs community is exploding. Our athletics are exploding. We have great youth programs here. Our high school sports are having an unbelievably successful season. And we wanted to highlight that and just kind of give an idea of what we can be doing to help them as coaches and parents, and see where we might have some gaps to fill in, and where we can get that. So you're an incredible resource. And if anybody, parents, coaches, athletes, wanted to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Instagram is best. Social media is king. So just my last name at McQuilkin, McQuilkin, or catch me on the sideline of our games.
And you also have a pretty good podcast of your own going. So
Yes.
if they want to get deeper into the science of sports performance, where can they hear that?
That is Power Athlete Radio, the premier podcast in strength and conditioning, 10 years strong.
It's a good one. I really enjoy listening to you. So, yeah, buddy, thanks for coming on, taking the time. And anything you want to leave us with, or we ready to roll?
Thanks for the opportunity. I mean, it's athleticism. That is the goal. That's the mission. And if you get hurt in the weight room, you can't play. So
That's true.
Just be smart with it. Push, find the boiling point, not the breaking point. And if talking to parents out there, like create a relationship with your coaches, and don't be quick to judge and pull them down, because you may now create some negative behavior with authority in your kiddo, and it won't stop on the field. It'll be taken into the classroom and eventually work, and just start this domino effect. Unfortunately, that's not the way to go.
And the message for the kids: work hard, have fun. Thanks, Chris. We really appreciate you coming on here, and we look to see some success coming down the road. Hopefully that soccer team finishes strong, and we can have a strong finish to our season as well. So again, at McQuilkin on Instagram, Power Athlete Radio. We'll see you soon, and we hope that you are all sold on drip. Thank you for listening to the Sold on Drip podcast. Please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future episodes. If you would like to connect, learn more about dripping springs, or have any questions regarding Central Texas real estate, you can find me at soldondrip.com or on Instagram at Bill Cafferetta. I hope to see you around town.